Hello, and welcome to the HarperCollins Children's Books Summer 2024 Librarian Preview. I'm Maggie Reagan, Books for Youth Senior Editor at Booklist. Before we begin, we're going to go over some technical details. Links to today's slide presentation and title list were included in the reminder email you received from Zoom 1 hour ago. To download them, please open that email, scroll to the bottom, and click on the links located there. You can also download the slides and title list by copying the URLs on this screen into your web browser. If you have any trouble, please contact us at webinars@booklistonline.com. The audience is in listen-only mode, but we welcome any questions you may have. On the bottom of your screen is a toolbar with a section for Q&A. If you have a question or need technical assistance, simply click Q&A and type your message into the box that appears. We will do our best to respond to all tech-related questions. And if you have questions for our panelists today, please include those as well, and we will pass them along to the panelists so they can follow up with you either during this webinar or afterwards. Booklist offers closed captioning on all webinars. To enable or disable captions on your screen, please look for and click the captions icon on the toolbar mentioned earlier. From there, you can select Show or Hide Captions from the menu that appears. If you do choose to enable subtitles, you can adjust the size of the captions at any time by selecting Subtitle Settings. And finally, Booklist expects all participants to maintain an atmosphere of respect and fairness. Anyone who violates this standard of behavior, including engaging in any form of harassment, may, at the discretion of the organizers, be immediately removed. We have a wonderful program for you today, so without further ado, I'll pass things off to Patty Rosati and the Harper Stacks team. Take it away, Patty.
Hi, can everybody hear me okay? Yes, I am so happy that you're here with us for our Summer 24 Librarian Preview. We have put together a session that I think is going to be worth your while. Mimi, Christina, and I will tell you about terrific middle grade picture and YA books that we've got coming in the spring and summer of this year. And we have three outstanding creators with us today who are going to share some behind the book stories about their new works. And I'd love to get to it after these short words from us, your sponsor. One thing I want to note at the top is that you can request the titles that you're hearing about today from both NetGalley and Edelweiss. The full picture book PDFs are on Edelweiss, and you can immediately access them by clicking on the links on each entry. Also, we could only fit a few Harper summer titles into this presentation today, and there are many, many more goodies coming your way in the beginning of the year, and they're all listed in an Edelweiss seasonal catalog that's linked at the end of this presentation that I hope you'll spend some time with. So let's get into it. We're going to start with a few braggy slides, if you will. As we certainly love to boast about the award-winning work that our authors and illustrators publish, and we were over the moon to have these titles honored from a variety of committees, and we heartily and heartfully thank those hardworking committee members for their tireless work and for their really good taste for awarding all of these books. If you want to hit the next slide, we've got more. Yay! We will really look forward to celebrating these wonderful authors and books and committee folks in San Diego at ALA in June. Okay, I think that's enough for the bragging. Now I'm really happy to introduce you to one of my favorite poets and one of the best human beings on the planet, Naomi Shihab Nye. Naomi describes herself as a wandering poet. She's spent more than 40 years traveling the country and the world, leading writing workshops and inspiring students of all ages. Naomi is the author and editor of more than 30 books. Her books of poetry for adults and young people include 19 Varieties of Gazelle, Poems of the Middle East, which was a finalist for the National Book Award, Honeybee, which was the winner of the Arab American Book Award, The Turtle of Oman, and many more. She was named the 2019-21 Young People's Poet Laureate by the Poetry Foundation. We are thrilled to have a new collection of 100 new poems from Naomi coming in May in her new book, Grace Notes. She's here to tell us about it. Please help me welcome Naomi Shihab Nye.
Thank you so much, Patty, and thanks to Booklist for welcoming us all this morning. I'm speaking from warm San Antonio where it feels like spring. Long ago, in a fourth grade writing workshop, a girl named Brenda wrote, "My mother is a shell, and you can always hear the ocean." That line stays with me forever. A boy named Emmett wrote about his Choctaw Indian great-great-grandfather, whose name was really Strong Ant, carry twice its size, but he changed it to Emmett. Who are these people we live among? Where did we all come from? How did we get together? In Grace Notes, Poems About Families, I explore some of these basic questions. Written mostly after my mom died on Thanksgiving in 2021, I referred to notebooks I had kept throughout my life and many memories and questionings. Even though she had just died, working on the book was not sad. It was as if we were still visiting together, laughing and talking. As Scottish poet Alistair Reid once wrote, "Now begins the conversation going on and on and on." Children in workshops had never needed too much prodding to write about their family members. It felt close, easy. I told them I was in college before I even realized we could do that. But families are our first tribes, our first communities. Why not? They're the people we know best from the beginning. We always talked about how it is okay to make metaphors for one another. A 2,000-year-old poem by a poet from India named Vishnavath was one model we used. My father, a tall mountain no one can climb. My mother, a river loving all her tiny streams. Vishnavath's poem ended, and I, a kettle of water boiling away into steam. I told kids they could also write about grandparents, uncles, aunties, teachers who felt like family, neighbors, and so forth. In my new book, Grace Notes, many of those other people showed up too. I'd always written a lot about my dad, but writing so much about my mom felt somehow new. She'd been a shyer person when I was growing up. She once said, "Leave me out of your poems." But as she got older, she asked, "Hey, what about me?" I also explored depression in this book, something my mother suffered from intermittently and intensely all her life till she was 85. Then it left her, boom. I never read anything about depression when I was small. People didn't talk about it, but it was challenging for a child. I admired her creative spirit so much. You saw that picture of her as an artist. She was the first full-time art student scholarship that Washington University ever gave. She was an amazing creative person in the eyes of all my friends. And it's always a shock to realize your parent had a full life before you were even born. I tried to consider some of that too. Here's one poem from the new book. It's called Loving Ashley Bryan. I was 4, cross-legged on the floor. My mama sat beside me, opening mail. Her breath rose in a gasp. She flew from bloom to joy. Inside one thick envelope, a delicate hand-painted book, crane on the cover, thin white note. This is for Naomi. But she wouldn't give it to me. She read the letter in its perfect slanted script, then read it again. "Who is it from?" I said. "Can I hold it at least?" And she closed her eyes. She sighed. I knew then there were secrets we would live with all our lives, mysteries no one could describe. You make a friend, they change you forever. But how do you tell someone else? Later, we would all know Ashley Bryan. Like millions of other people in the world, we would all fall in love with him, even my dad. I'm very grateful to Lynn Averill for the glorious art she did for this book, to my trusty editor, Virginia Duncan, who's been a major shining light in my life for more than 30 years, To the wonderful team at Green Willow, invincible copy editor Tim Smith, and wonderful art director Paul Zachris, and everybody there and at HarperCollins for believing in my work. Hopefully, a young person reading Grace Notes will end up thinking more about their own mom and family members than mine. That's what we always talked about in class regarding family poems. We're trying to find points of gravity for ourselves, ways we are like and unlike others. We're trying to understand more about who we are. Your grandmother poem may cause me to think about my grandmother more. It's the positive contagion of poetry. As a Palestinian American, I grieve so much these days for the brokenness happening between Arab and Jewish people who should really be behaving like the brothers and sisters that we are. We've all seen the news stories, whole families being wiped out. It's unthinkably horrible, very hard to stay positive sometimes. Poetry continues to help me do that. We need to treasure the bonds we have to stay steady, make more bonds, expand our families and sense of family. How many times kids told me they felt they knew their families better after writing about them, or how the subjects of their poems treasured what they had said. I can only hope my mom would like this book. Thanks for listening to me talk about Grace Notes. It was fun to work on, and I sincerely hope you will like it.
Well, thank you so much, Naomi. I'm going to call my mom right after this. This is so amazing. Hi, everyone. My name is Mimi Rankin. I'm the Associate Director of School and Library Marketing here at HarperCollins Children's Books. I've got about 47 million books to talk to you about today, so I'm going to get through these quite quickly, and we'll go ahead and get started. So first up, I want to tell you about the one and only Catherine Applegate is back. This is the fourth and final book in the award-winning One and Only series by Catherine Applegate. This is following Ivan on his most exciting adventure yet, Parenthood. Next slide. All right, in CSK honoree Johnny Christmas's newest offering, a video gamer's championship aspirations are dashed when his parents sent him to Camp Refresh, a summer camp where electronics are forbidden and you're forced to socialize, eat healthy, and spend time outside. If you are a fan of Swim Team, this is fantastic, and I'm so excited for everyone to read this one. Next, please. All right, from Lisa Moore Ramey. She is the award-winning author of A Good Kind of Trouble, and this is a heartfelt young middle grade novel in the vein of Judy Blume about friendship, fitting in, and the ups and downs of middle school. Next slide, please. We've also got some really amazing middle grade historical fiction on this list. So first on the left, we have Lion of the Sky. This is an evocative historical debut novel in verse about a boy and his family who are forced to flee their home and become refugees after the British partition of India. We also have Safia's War. This is inspired by the true story of how the Grand Mosque of Paris saved the lives of hundreds of Jews during World War II. Next slide, please. All right, we have a really cool new middle grade series for those of you who have middle grade readers who love to be a little bit spooked. And are you brave enough to visit Cabin 23? The Boo Hag Flex and Night of the Living Head are the first two books that will simultaneously launch this fun and frightening middle grade horror series that highlights diverse authors and characters, and created by the best-selling and critically acclaimed authors Justina Ireland and Hannah Alcoff, who write these first two ones. Next, please. All right, a little bit more spooky things for our middle grade readers. First, we have Camp Sylvania Moon Madness from the beloved Julie Murphy, and she co-authored this with Crystal Maldonado. This is the second Camp Sylvania book, so if you haven't read the first one, definitely check that one out as well. We also have The Creeping of Dogwood House from Eden Royce, who was the Walter Award honor-winning author of Root Magic. It's a really amazing contemporary Southern Gothic tale. So those are both you'll want to add to your list for a little bit of a spooky read. Next, please. All right, we have more middle grade in verse. First, Murray Out of Water. When a hurricane hits the Jersey shoreline, 12-year-old Murray O'Shea is separated from the one thing that makes her feel understood, the ocean. This is a really amazing coming-of-age exploration of queer identity, family, and friendship. We also have Redbird Dance from Dawn Quigley, who just received 2 Ayla honors at Live Learn X for her JoJo McCoon's series. And this is, also, like I said, in verse. And this is the story of urban Native kids who find strength and connection with those who came before. Next slide, please. All right, so these are some really amazing sibling stories on the middle grade list. The first on the left from the incomparable John David Anderson, Keep It Like a Secret. This is a boy who has one day to convince his older sister to come home and to put their family back together. It's really an unexpected and heartfelt novel. And then we also have Invisible Isabel. Sally J. Pla won the Schneider Award for middle grade this year, so we're so excited for her, and this is her next book with us. This is an illustrated middle grade novel about introverted Isabel Bean, and she learns how she can speak up to help quiet the worries she feels. Next slide, please. All right, so we've got a bunch of really great, diverse contemporary middle grade on this slide. Lily Zhao Speaks Out from the author of It's Boba Time for Pearl Lee. We also have With Twice the Love, Desi May, which is a beautiful story about twins who were adopted and separated at birth, and then they reconnect. It's really, really beautiful. Finn and Ezra's Bar Mitzvah Time Loop by Joshua S. Levy. And this is kind of like Groundhog's Day meets Bar Mitzvahs. Really, really fun and a really great friendship story. Sam Mira's Worst Best Summer. Nina Hamza is a hilarious middle grade voice, so definitely check this one out. And then The Truth About Triangles, which is a really great family business story about a young gay boy who's trying to save his family's pizzeria. It's really, really sweet. Next slide, please. All right, then we've got some more mysteries. So if you've got those readers who maybe don't want to be spooked, but want to be kind of just intrigued, these are some great ones too. Spiring follows some kids who are kind of discovering an American Revolution era mystery set in their hometown. So they're figuring out a long ago mystery. The Cookie Crumbles, if you can imagine, deals with kind of a baking competition. Very fun, but there's a little bit of a mystery there. And then Foul Play, I love this jacket so much with the parrot. Actually it's a murder mystery, or excuse me, just a death mystery, where there's an exploration of grief, but also kind of a whodunit. And it involves a talking parrot, which is very fun. So next slide, please. All right, so here's some other really great middle grade fantasy. We have Through a Clouded Mirror, which is Alice in Wonderland, Wizard of Oz inspired, but set in a magical imperial Japan. If you read The Pearl Hunter, this is that author, absolutely fantastic. Glass from Newbery Honor winning author Catherine Lasky. This is a retelling of Cinderella, but through the eyes of the fairy godmother. So definitely want to check that one out. And then Kingdom of Dust, if you're familiar with A Comb of Wishes, that is Lisa Stringfellow, this author. And this is a really amazing West African inspired fantasy. Next slide, please. All right, Warriors. I know you all, I'm sure, have tons of Warriors readers in your life. And this kind of maps out all of the different arcs and the different groupings and publications. But what I really want to talk to you about is we are finally doing a graphic novel adaptation of the first two original Warriors books. So that's going to be, the original first two from like 20 years ago. Over 40 million books have been sold in this series. So we're excited to expand into graphic novels. Next slide, please. All right, so here's some more graphic novels and illustrated novels. So Always Anthony, this is the 8th Emmy and Friends book. We're so excited, and this one does tackling bullying, very important, very timely. The Old Willis Place, this is the newest graphic novel adaptation of one of Mary Downing Hahn's most popular books. Felix Powell Boy Dog. So this is in the world of maybe Marisol Rainey and all the Marisol Rainey books from the incomparable Erin Entrada Kelly. This one kind of just expands the world and follows Felix, who magically turns into a dog. Very fun. Then we also have Dungeons and Dragons Dungeon Club Time to Party. This is the next Dungeons and Dragons graphic novel that we have. This is the second one. And then How It All Ends. So if you all have read the viral or seen the viral How to Draw a Horse comic from the New Yorker, this is that creator. This is their debut. So we're so excited. And it's really, really touching, a really wonderful coming of age story. Next slide, and I think I've got, yeah, these are my last 2 slides, I think. And then we just have some really great books that are award-winning or beloved authors coming out in paperback, so perfect for classrooms. We've got When Clouds Touch Us, Tang Hao Lai, Heroes of the Water Monster, The Witch of Woodland, The Greatest Kid in the World, The International House of Dereliction, and next slide, please. Mirror to Mirror from Rajni LaRocca. Like I was talking about Sally J. Plott earlier, this is the book that she just won the Schneider for, The Fire, the Water, and Maudie McGinn. Ruby Lost and Found, which won the Apollo this year for middle grade, and We Still Belong, which won the ALA for middle grade by Christine Day. I think that's all of the titles for middle grade, so I think I got through them all, and I will hand it back over to Patty Rosati.
Wow. I mean, you're a warrior of speed book talking after that. Good job. A lot of really great stuff coming from our middle grade team. I'm really happy to introduce you to Patricia McCormick, who is a former journalist and 2-time National Book Award finalist, whose books include Cut, Sold, Never Fall Down, The Plot to Kill Hitler, the Young Readers edition of I Am Malala, and the award-winning picture book Sergeant Reckless, the true story of the little horse who became a hero, which won the Texas Bluebonnet Award. Her latest book, written with Mevin Babakar, tells the true story of how a simple act of kindness changed a young refugee's life. It's an outstanding picture book by an outstanding author with a terrific first name. Please help me welcome Patty McCormick.
Outstanding first name, but not great tech skills. I'm so happy to have this opportunity to talk to you about this book. I'm really excited about it, in part because it's a true story about an act of kindness that really changed someone's life. I'm also excited to talk to you about it because it's topical. It's a story about a refugee, and the refugee at the center of the story is a child. And I feel like we hear and read so many stories about the refugee crisis and about the policies and the struggles of immigrants, but not from the child's point of view. And I think we lose sight of the real human kids who are caught up in this massive movement of people all over the world. It also shows that being a refugee, the odyssey of being a refugee, isn't an A to B kind of experience. You leave your home in one country, you end up at a home in another country. Mivan's story is really typical of the way refugees get sent here, then here, there, then here, then there. And in every single place, they are shunned and not wanted. And, you know, I think it's important for us to look at what that does to a child's sense of safety and sense of security and self-esteem to keep being thrust into these new circumstances and feeling not wanted. The little girl in the book describes the feelings that she has when she's at home in her home country. She feels like she's 10 feet tall. All her aunts and uncles adore her. Everybody fusses over her. And when her family is forced to move, she feels forgotten. And she gets a sense that there's a lot of danger in these new places. And so she makes herself smaller and smaller and smaller until she really feels like she's invisible. And there's this one person, this kindly caretaker at one of the refugee centers, and he sees her. He sees that she's just shrinking and disappearing right before his eyes and does something very simple, and that is to give her a bike. And with that toy and with that feeling of mobility, all of a sudden, she's like the other kids. She's a kid again and not just a refugee. I'm going to tell you, I want to be sure to tell you about Mivan, but first I want to tell you about the magic that the illustrator of this book achieved. Yas Imamura has done something really remarkable, I think. She's taken a story that's serious and that in other hands could be bleak. And she has threaded the needle of showing us that experience in all its fullness, its sadness and its small joys. And I just want to point out one thing that she did that shows the care that she took in creating this book and the care that HarperCollins put into this book. There are soldiers chasing the family out of its home. And there are helicopters that are shown circling in the sky, and they show people looking up with worried faces. But there are no weapons, and there's no direct confrontation with the authorities. There's more a feeling of menace, and I believe that that's really the child's eye point of view. That children wouldn't necessarily focus on, weaponry, for instance. They'd focus on, are we safe? Is mom safe? Am I going to see my grandparents again? And so that confusion of being uprooted, she just does it so well. It has the illustrations have a deftness and a lightness that even though this is a serious book, it doesn't get bogged down in, certainly not in the politics, but not in that feeling of it being so fearful that it would frighten the child reader. I think it makes the refugee experience more accessible to the child reader. And then I just want to tell you a little bit about how this story came to be. I read a story in the newspaper about a woman who'd been a refugee in Kurdistan. And after many trips here, there, and the other place, she ended up in the UK. And as an adult, she decided to retrace the steps of that journey that she and her parents took. So she took a sabbatical from work and she went to Kurdistan. She went to Azerbaijan. She went to Russia. She retraced the entire journey and ended up in this little village in Holland where she had been when this man gave her a bike. And she said to people, there was this really nice guy. He was always helping the refugees. He was bringing people pots and pans or blankets or whatever they needed. And one day he brought me a bike and I never was, then we moved and I was never properly able to tell him what it meant to me. And I wasn't able to say goodbye. So she put it on Twitter and 10 people picked it up, then 100, then 1,000, then 6,000. Within the afternoon, they had found him. And so I get the chills every time I think about that because this book is also about community. It's about a bunch of strangers reaching out to each other through Twitter, basically, and finding this man and reuniting him and Mivan. And so I'm thinking too about what Naomi said about that feeling of brokenness and fracturedness in this world. This book offers a little bit of hope and a little feeling of agency about what we can do, even when the world does feel like a really terrible place. That here is this community of strangers on the internet who just helped out. And the book also closes with a kind of a gentle call to action for the readers to think about a time when somebody did a small act of kindness that made a difference in their lives. And then it also asks, what's something that you can do perhaps to be generous or be kind or be gentle to a fellow human being. And I feel like it's not a messagey book, but these stories pierce that feeling of separateness and aloneness and fracturedness. And I think it really instills a little bit of hope that no, we can't fix this big broken world, but we can each do one small thing. I think that's a message we really need to hear. And so I just want to close with two images. One is Mivan when she was a refugee at age 6. That's a birthday party that she had somewhere, and how darling she is. And then the next slide is her as an adult being reunited with this man who was so kind to her. So thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about their story.
Thank you so much for that, Patty. You got me a little bit teary. So now I have to put it all back together so I can share some of the other amazing picture books that we have coming up. My name is Christina Carpino. Pronouns are she, her, and I'm the assistant manager on our team. Like Mimi, I have a lot of books to get through, so I'll be moving pretty quickly. But remember that you can access the full PDFs of all of these titles through our Edelweiss catalog. We'll start off with another inspiring story. Roseanne Perry is the beloved author of the Voice of the Wilderness series, which has won accolades throughout the country. And now she brings us a nonfiction picture book all about the reintroduction of wolves to Yellowstone National Park. This works great with younger elementary kids in STEM programs or classes, or with older readers as a companion to A Wolf Called Wander. Next slide. We have so many amazing books for story time. So we're going to be doing a whole campaign, and we've rounded up some exciting books perfect for your library story times. Start off with Corey Tabor, who brings us a new book, Ursula Upside Down, which incorporates his signature use of the gutter and makes for a really engaging read. Antoinette Portis's Not a Box has been a library staple since it was released almost 20 years ago. And now she brings us a follow-up, Not a Box City. Imagine how much fun you could have reading the story and then having your patrons build their own cardboard cities. And Kevin Henkes is back with a child-centered concept book with bold images that work great in large rooms for story time. Kids all the way in the back will be able to see. It asks children to imagine what they could do with different things that they find, and lends itself to many different imaginative play and craft activities as follow-up. Next slide. Emergency Quarters is another one featuring bright and inviting illustrations. It features a lovely family in a lively city and the opportunity to teach kids about how back in the day we had used payphones instead of cell phones. The poetic text is a joy to read aloud, and this would be great to use for school outreach visits where teachers can connect it to learning about coins and money. And a book that probably needs no introduction is the latest Pete the Cat. National Ice Cream Day is July 21st. Put it on your calendar. And be sure to have this sweet book on hand to cool off readers at your ice cream themed story times. Next slide. And here are a few more that will make for wonderful additions. A Tiny Difference about how to get out of a funk by slowing down and moving your body, great from mindfulness. When We Gather, a delicious story about Cherokee tribal feast. And A Family Tree, which is a tender story about moving away, but staying connected with your family and its history. Next slide, please. So in addition to the amazing book that Patty just told us about, we have a slew of new nonfiction picture books, which are great for seasonal displays, introducing thematic programs, or for older readers who just want to learn everything. On this page, we have picture book biographies on architect I.M. Pei and First Lady Eleanor Roosevelt, as well as a beautiful illustrated poem, I See Color, and a book on the history of the bicycle, which for many children is their first mode of independent transportation. Next slide. And here are some picture books featuring social emotional learning messages. Lighthouse and Little Boat is about weathering storms, literal and figurative, and how love will guide us home. The Squish is about Sandcastle, who tries to keep getting bigger and taller in an attempt to not be squished by the kids at the beach. And those two would be perfect, by the way, for paired beach-themed story time. Brian Pinkney takes on sibling rivalry with humor, love, and emotional depth in Brandon and the Baby, and Abuela's Library celebrates intergenerational bonding over books and building a little free library. Next slide. Your House is Not Just a House is another one that's absolutely perfect for story time. Author Idris Goodwin is a playwright, rapper, and poet by trade, and this book just begs to be read aloud. Box of Dreams explores the Filipino tradition of balikbayan boxes, which is when families who have immigrated fill boxes of gifts and treats and food to send back to their family in the Philippines. B, Black Girl B is a lyrical and affirming picture book, sure to instill readers with confidence. And Digger in the Dark is the latest in the Digger series. He's back and ready to rest after a long day's work, but some mischievous raccoons appear with a different idea. Next slide, please. And even though we're talking about summer books, right after summer comes spooky season. So here are some books to kick off the celebrations at your library. Trunk or Treat is perfect if your library is participating in this event in your community. Could read this at story time to kick things off and really promote the event, or read it from the trunk of your car the day of. Wolfgang in the Meadow is an utterly adorable ghost story for those kids preferring sweet over spooky, and Raoul III returns to celebrate Halloween and Dia de los Muertos, two different holidays celebrated on back-to-back days by many of your patrons. And next slide. And some other holidays and events your patrons are going to be celebrating. They Built Me for Freedom is a story of Houston's Emancipation Park and the many celebrations that have happened there over the years. First Day Hooray is perfect for celebrating all of the feelings that kids may have about returning to school. Some of them excited, some of them nervous, some of them terrified. And Navya Sings for Navratri is a beautifully illustrated story about the Hindu holiday celebrating the divine feminine, and includes back matter with a glossary and more information about the holiday. And that wraps up our picture books. Of course, we have lots more, so definitely check out the Edelweiss catalog.
Thanks, Christina. More speed book talking. I love it. I'm glad you got through all those terrific picture books. So we're going to move on to teen, and I'm going to tell you about a bunch of teen novels after we hear from our next speaker. And I have a hunch that your patrons and students are big fans of hers. I fell in love with her work when I read 13 Little Blue Envelopes in my early days here at HarperCollins, and the love affair continued with the Truly Devious series, the Sweet Scarlet series, and the Shade of London series. She's written collaborative work such as Let It Snow with John Green and Lauren Myracle, and The Bane Chronicles with Cassandra Clare and Sarah Reese Brennan. Maureen's new book, Death at Mourning House, is not part of a series and will stand on its own with new characters and a terrific new mystery. Let's welcome Maureen Johnson, who will tell us some more about it.
Hello, sorry about that. My mouse slid away from me. I am Maureen Johnson, and I'm thrilled to be here today talking to librarians and to be with Naomi and Patty. This is a huge honor. And before I talk about my book, I just want to say, especially talking to an audience of librarians right now, how much I appreciate what you do and what you're going through and fighting for to make sure kids get to read books. I can't believe we're here, but here we are. So thank you for doing what you do. And that cover you just saw is Death at Mourning House, which is coming out on August the 6th. And you've seen the cover for the first time. It was finalized yesterday. So I'm very excited to share it with you. I love it. And it has a story in it, which I will show and share with you later. But Death at Mourning House is a new standalone mystery. So maybe you've read, I have behind me some of the Stevie Bell mysteries behind my giant fluffy microphone. Those are the Stevie Bell mysteries. This is not a Stevie Bell mystery, though there will be more of these. This is a new fair play mystery. And it's queer friendly. It features a queer romance. I'm looking at my notes. Whenever I speak, I write notes. And then usually about halfway through, I check them out the window. But I wanted to tell you these things. It has a dual timeline. So like the Truly Devious series, some of the events take place in the present and some will flash back to a crime that happened in the past, in this case in 1932. And there are kind of scattered throughout some elements of US history that may be interesting to kind of incorporate, or, you know, if anyone has any questions, I love getting questions. You can send them to me by putting them in the Q&A or going to my website, which is maureenjohnson.com. And I'm happy to chat about all of these things. But now I'd like to talk about Death at Mourning House. And that means I need to introduce you to Marlo Wexler, who is our main character. She lives near Syracuse, New York, and she has been in love with the beautiful Akilah Jones for all of high school. It is a beautiful but faraway love, for Akilah is perfect, and Marlo is just Marlo. But they get a summer job together, surprise, at Guffey's Ice Cream. And they get to know each other for the first time. They get to talk. She finds out that Akilah's favorite smell is petrichor, that smell after the rain. I love this smell personally. And Marlo has a side job. She helps take care of a cabin that some of her family friends have near a lake. She's sort of allowed to use it. You know, she's not supposed to kind of just go in there, but you know, it's basically fine. She works up the courage. She asks Akilah out because she has a gift certificate to the Cheesecake Factory. They go out. It all goes well. She says, Akilah, would you like to see the cabin? Akilah's like, I would like to see the cabin. They go to the cabin where Marlo has purchased a scented candle, the best that Etsy has to offer, $30, quality product. She lights the petrichor candle. Romance blooms. It's beautiful. Everything is perfect. Until that scented candle explodes, then takes up the curtains, they run out, and the cabin goes up like that. After this, Marlo basically decides that her goal in life is to hide in her bedroom forever and not come out, but that's not an option. And one of her teachers from school offers her a lifeline. There's a place. It's called Morning House. It's up in the Thousand Islands. And there's a house there that's being opened for the first time to the public since 1932. And they need one more tour guide. There's this woman named Dr. Belinda Henson. She's running it. They need one more tour guide. They're short. And Marlo's good at learning things on the fly. So now Marlo goes to Morning House. And at this point, I'm going to ask to bring up the first slide. I feel so official saying that. And bring up the first slide, like I'm giving you a presentation on your accounts. First, this is the cover to Death at Morning House, which, as I say, is being revealed for the first time. And I will show you that later that there are a bunch of clues embedded in this cover that absolutely delights me because I am a mystery fan to the absolute core, and I love a cover that has little hints in it. So if we could go on to the next slide. This is a picture of the Thousand Islands, or a part of it. Now, the Thousand Islands is actually about 1,800 islands, but I guess they were like, 1,000 sounds better. And so they went with 1,000, but it's more. And it's a really unusual and beautiful area. I don't know if some of you will be familiar with it, some won't. I went up there and visited. I went during the Great Fire of last summer when it had like the biggest amount of smoke. So I chose wisely. But you can live on an island. So some of these islands, if we could go to the next slide, are like this, which I love. You can have a house that's like this. This says, I don't want to talk to you. I'm going to live on an island and not even really be able to get out my front door. I applaud this, and I applaud the one sort of dead-looking tree behind it. Shout out. But Morning House is going to look a little bit more like this, if we could go to the next slide. This is Bolt Castle. It's the most famous, that's my dog chiming in to say that she loves it too. Can you please not? The librarians do not need the barking. What can you do? This is the most famous, seriously, the most famous structure in the Thousand Island region, and it has its own beautiful, weird history. But this is the kind of thing that was also built in the Thousand Islands. Beautiful, big, huge mansions that had a big millionaires row where people yachted to each other's houses. Can we go to the next slide? This is just another kind of image of what Morning House is going to look like. Now, Morning House was built by the Ralston family, by Philip, who was a doctor who worked, he had a sister named Dagmar. These things are going to matter. He worked in World War I, and he adopted 6 babies and brought them all home to America. And then he married a beautiful movie star named Faye, and they had another child named Max. And at the time of 1932, the older kids are about 16. Max is about 4. You're going to hear that this was this beautiful, perfect, idyllic. This is where they summered. But the first thing you find out is that one night in July 1932, Max is found drowned in the lagoon. And that night, his sister Clara, who was a dancer, dances crazily along the roof's edge and then leaps off due to grief. Or so the story goes. And that's when Marlo is going to enter the picture. The stories converge. Marlo finds out that she is taking the place of someone who has died, that she is filling in a dead person's shoes, and someone else on the island will disappear all in a short time. And you'll find out what really happened in 1932 and what happened in the present. So really the message of Death at Morning House is never leave a scented candle unattended. And if we could just go to the next slide very quickly. Okay, this is a zoom of the back. Now, what's amazing is that everything in this cover has significance or a hint. the pictures on the walls. And you'll see this is a detail of the wallpaper in the back where you can see the house and a girl falling off. I mean, this was an amazing experience of working with Harper on the cover art and really trying to tell a mystery story and do an old-fashioned mystery cover. And if we could go to the next one, it even has details in the fabric of the chair. The camera, of course, is a clue. So like they'll see a girl dancing. You'll see little things in there that are all clues. And then we could just go to, and you can see the whole thing in the next slide. And everything in there has a hint in it. I'm a big map lover. I'm a big picture lover. I like a clue. So we can get rid of the slides. Thank you. Sorry about that. I feel like I'm giving orders, but that's Death at Morning House. It's coming on August 6th. I couldn't be more excited. Truly, I have been a mystery lover all my life. And it wasn't until I started doing Truly Devious that I realized I could live the mystery lifestyle full time. And really, I'm doing this because I'm trying to pull a Jessica Fletcher and get someone to contact me to ask me to solve a crime. This is not a joke. This is my literal wish. So get in touch immediately. But again, most importantly, I want to thank you for what you do. You are, I mean, it's going to sound dramatic, but you are the defenders of freedom. You are, and you provide so many services aside from books. We know you're out there giving social support. You're keeping people warm. You're keeping people fed, all of those things. So thank you what you do for all you do. It's truly appreciated. And MJ out. Thank you for having me.
You're muted, Patty.
Sorry, thank you. I was just gushing and saying, thanks, Maureen, for being here. And I loved how you went through the jacket. And I only saw it very briefly yesterday, but to see Maureen sort of take us through each piece of it is so fun and so great. And I will never leave a scented candle alone in the future. Okay. I am going to tell you about a couple of our great teen titles coming. So if we could start with those slides, that would be great. So this is Neil Schusterman, and Yelsa's Margaret Edwards Committee made a really smart choice this year, I think, when they awarded Neil the Lifetime Achievement Award, lauding him for writing books that are both of the moment and timeless, engaging readers of all abilities and interests, and whose stories remind readers that they aren't alone, that their views are important, and that the world is a better place with them. Could not be happier to have a new standalone novel from Neil called Break to You, which he wrote with two of his author friends, Deborah Young and Michelle Nolden. Here's the premise. Adriana and John are both incarcerated in two different wings of the same detention center. Adriana was framed by her so-called friend and will be in for about 7 months. John has been in the center for years and will be in the prison system for years to come. Thankfully, Adriana is allowed to keep her journal where she writes down her most private thoughts. But when Adriana accidentally leaves it in the library that is shared by both the boys and the girls, John finds it. And the two, through the journal, begin a correspondence that leads them to a dangerous plan to try to meet. This is a tender love story set in a very unlikely place. And it's also an expose of our cruel and broken system of juvenile detention. Neil, Deborah, and Michelle did a great deal of research to get all the details right. We publish in July. Neil will be at ALA signing first copies of the book. So if you are there, please look him up, look us up, and get an early copy. Next slide, please. First up is Looking for Smoke. 4 teens on the Blackfeet Reservation find themselves suspects in an investigation when a classmate is found murdered during the annual Indian Day celebration. K.A. Cobell is an enrolled member of the Blackfeet Nation, and this is her thrilling debut novel that casts a keen and important light on the missing and murdered Indigenous women epidemic in a page-turning story with a really good twisty ending. It kept me guessing until the bitter end. I think you hand this book to fans of Karen McManus and Angeline Booley. Sunrise Nights is told in the alternating points of view of Jude and Florence, who meet on the last night of summer camp during the tradition to stay up all night until you see the sunrise. The book centers around 3 such sunrise nights over the course of a few years, through which we get snapshots of Jude's and Florence's lives, including struggles with anxiety, the turmoil of divorce, and a devastating medical condition. And we experience a friendship and maybe something more that grows out of these sunrise nights. Jeff Zentner is the award-winning author of two of my favorite YA books, The Serpent King and In the Wild Night. He wrote Jude's character, and Bree, the best-selling author of the Charlotte Holmes series, wrote Florence. And the combined result is a smart, thoughtful, and swoony summer novel written in verse, I should mention, and conversations. And I think this plot done by these writers in this really cool format is really going to be very appealing to you and to your readers. And then last but not least on the slide is my hero, Gary Schmidt. This is Jupiter Rising. I think a lot of us think of Gary Schmidt for his perfectly crafted middle grade novels, but he, of course, also has done lots of good work in the YA space as well, including Orbiting Jupiter, which came out in 2015, critically acclaimed, sells great year in and year out. That book tackles themes of teen pregnancy, and it centers on two foster brothers who discover the true meaning of family. So here in Jupiter Rising, we're about a year after the events of Orbiting Jupiter, and Gary has expertly woven in enough background in the beginning pages of the book so that you don't need to have read that to understand this. You can read it as a standalone. I've tested it. It's true. And in this book, 14-year-old Jack is grieving the loss of Joseph, his foster brother, and adjusting to his role as big brother to Jupiter, Joseph's orphaned daughter. As Jack regains his footing, new revelations about his own past and a heart-tugging custody battle for Jupiter test both his newfound confidence and his friendships. It's noteworthy, I think, that the characters in Jupiter Rising are on the younger end of the YA age spectrum. Jack is 14. The main secondary character, Jay, is a couple years older than he is. So we think this could be a perfect book for those readers in the middle, 7th to 9th grade. I know there's been a lot of talk, smartly so, about finding books for this, really sort of important, little too old for middle grade, maybe a little too young for current YA. So I think this is perfect. We will publish in August. Next slide, please. A couple here. First up is True Love and Other Impossible Odds. Good title. Helen Hong meets Nina LaCour in this queer YA book written by Christina Lee, who was the 2024 Apollo Award-winning author of Ruby, Lost and Found. This is Christina's YA debut, and it centers on Grace, a new college student who develops an algorithm to predict people's perfect matches, all while questioning her own sexuality for the first time. Bad Graces, this is Yellow Jackets meets House of Hollow, written by award-winning author Kiri McKelly, a gripping and magical YA thriller that follows a group of young women as they face the stress of harsh elements, a mysterious monster, and an unraveling of secrets after their yacht is wrecked off the coast of North America. This is loosely inspired on Shakespeare's The Tempest. And in it, Kiri injects a fierce feminist perspective to this classic survival story, making it a really fresh addition to the genre, not only in the way that the girls band together to survive, but also in the truth that's hidden on the island. I mean, as with all books written by Kiri, who won the Morris Award years ago for her debut novel, this is one to add to your TBR pile. We will publish in June. And then last but not least on this slide, this book, Girls Like Her. It's a gripping and authentic novel about Ruby Monroe. She's a 15-year-old Texas girl set to stand trial for murder, and the one person who might be able to help her clear her name. Girls Like Her is written by first-time novelist, you'll never believe she's first-timer, Melanie Sumrow, excuse me, who brings her 16 years of experience as an attorney in Texas to the details of Ruby's story. Melanie's works with some of the most vulnerable teens in our country, and she's uniquely positioned, I think, to tell the story of our system, how it's set up and how it's really set up to fail them. She also covers this in a must-read author's note in the book. This one also has an interesting sort of setup to it. It's presented through court transcripts, letters, meeting notes, newspaper articles, things like that. So the story unfolds in a nonlinear fashion, and it keeps you on the edge of your seat until a truly shocking ending. Hand this to readers who like books by Courtney Summers, Tess Sharp, and Marika Ninchkov. Next slide, thanks. Spilled Ink is an Afghan-American teenage In Spilled Ink, an Afghan-American's teenager's small town is thrown into controversy and violence when her brother, taking a stand against hatred, plays a prank that some think went too far. It's an insightful and affecting debut YA novel by Nadia Hashimi, the Afghan-American author of well-regarded novels for middle graders and adults as well. I think that this may also be another YA title that's a good bet for younger teens, sort of in that 8th and 9th grade level. Also on this slide, we have Beneath These Cursed Stars. This is from #1 New York Times bestselling author Lexi Ryan. All of your patrons know and love her books. This is a new duology. It brings new and old readers into the mystical world of fairy with the conspiracy, conflict, and court politics of Those Hollow Vows duology. And it's got even more romance this time. You can imagine. Popular series, popular author, popular genre these days, as you well know. We have a couple of graphic novels to tell you about. Brownstone is a stunning coming-of-age epic from author Samuel Tier and debut graphic novel artist Mar Julia. Brownstone, in the author's own words, is a story about navigating your heritage, even though you might feel like a fraud. Being mixed race, Latinx, makes up the fabric of who I am. This book was about sending up a signal flare to say to other mixed race people of all ages, hey, you are not alone. And the art in this book, this is Ignatz Award nominated artist Mar Julia's debut full-length graphic novel, and we are really excited to introduce them to the world. So this is another one to check out. And then a book that you are probably familiar with, this is Unordinary. This is the action-packed series from the #1 digital comic platform Webtoon. It continues as high schooler John confronts his troubled past and lurking dangers from the outside world, both of which threaten to topple Wellston's strict power hierarchy. And then I have a couple of nonfiction books on the next slide to tell you about. First one is Shift Happens. Love that title. It's an accessible and comprehensive YA history of the way the labor movement has shaped America and how it intersects with many of the major issues facing modern teens today. I think it's a good companion book to other titles out there that re-examine America's history, such as Stamped, America Redux, and A Young People's History of the United States. And then speaking of America Redux, there it is. We published last year. It won all kinds of awards and prizes, the Kirkus Prize, YALSA Best Nonfiction. It was a Kirkus Best Book of the Year, PW Best Book of the Year, SLJ Best Book of the Year, New York Public. I could go on and on. There are a lot. And here we are coming in paperback in a more affordable, sort of classroom-friendly paperback. So check that one out. And then a number of books in paperback, some award winners and some Queens of New York, another terrific book that came out this year. So you could add these two maybe to your summer reading list that I'm sure you're working on, if not already, then very, very soon. Next slide. And then again, some other terrific books coming out in paperback. I guess just to mention again, Edelweiss Collection has more books than we were able to present today, so check that out. E-galleys are available on Edelweiss NetGalley. PDFs of picture books are on Edelweiss. If you haven't used any of these platforms before, what you do is you put your name in, mention that you're an educator, and we will very, very quickly okay you to receive materials from us. If you have any questions or need any more information about these books or anything else, Mimi has volunteered to be the person to accept your emails, and her address is here. Can't thank you enough. I don't know, Grace and Co, if we have any questions to be answered.
Hey,
Or-
Patty, we've got a little extra time, so
Great.
yes, thank you for that. And I will invite all of our author panelists back on
Terrific.
to chat in
Great.
like our last 15 minutes here.
Hello.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for for your presentations. This was a really gorgeous webinar. I'm really happy to be here. We do have one question in the Q&A right now that I'm going to throw out to all of you, and then audience members, as you're listening, if any questions come up for you, feel free to drop those in the Q&A, and we'll see what we can fit in. So this is from an audience member who's just wanting to know, how was writing your new book a different process or an experience than writing your previous books, especially for some of you who are kind of playing around in genres that you're already familiar with. If anyone is interested in starting, let me know.
No one wants to go first.
Yeah, nobody ever does.
You have to call on one of us.
Well, okay, Naomi, do you want to start and we'll just go in presentation order?
Sure. Thanks for the question, and thank you all for your wonderful presentations, and also for the beautiful acknowledgement of librarians and all they're going through. For me, it was looking at everything that I thought I knew about my life and my family from a different angle. And that's one thing I often have talked to kids about, is just expanding our perspectives. How does this seem to someone else? And you think you know a lot, but you're constantly finding out more. And so it was just experiencing a broader picture and honoring a different person. I really had not written about my mother that much. And our mothers are such central figures if we're lucky enough to have them for a long time in our lives. So it was that for me.
For me, it was collaborating in a new way. I'm accustomed to doing in-depth interviews with subjects for some of my earlier books. But in this case, I really wanted Mivan to be the co-author. And so that was exciting. And also, it was illuminating to me about the refugee experience. I think one of the things that I learned was this notion of being shuffled from place to place. I didn't realize how common that was. I mean, in her case, country to country. But the most profound lesson that came to me from working with Mivan was, and she was working her author's note, and she said that she will always feel like a refugee. She will always feel like an immigrant wherever she lives. And that just hit me really hard as somebody who grew up and pretty much stayed where I was, to have that sense of a permanent stamp on you. And she's not necessarily saying it's a negative thing either. She says it gives her a capacity to see and feel for others. But anyhow, it was really, really fun to get to know the adult woman who packed all these refugee experiences in.
So this Death at Morning House is a new series of characters. It means building a new home, a new structure. I build really much from the ground up. I build the mystery. I kind of build the architecture of the place a lot. And I love to and seem to keep dipping back into certain parts of American history to have the backstory. And I will tell you that the 1930s story is about a very upper class family, but also the part of American history that comes up was a huge mainstream acceptance of eugenics as an actual science and as a good healthy thing. Like, you could go to the eugenics tent at the local state fair, and get your family measured. And that was fine. So some of that stuff that is very much out there, but we don't really discuss. So building a family that will crumble from within, like building a house that will fall down because of what it's built on. So there's always another corner of history to look into. And also, I just wanted to build a little bit more of a funny romantic character on the present day story. I'm terrible at romance. I have a lot of writer friends who chase me around. And I'm speaking particularly of the writer Holly Black, who is everybody's writing guru and is brilliant and will literally chase me around. I'm not joking. Maureen, have you worked on your romance plot? I run, chase me through a swimming pool. So yeah, a funny, happy, like a very happy queer romance that's funny, and a dark backstory where everyone dies. It's fun though, don't worry.
Well, thank you all so much for hopping on to give us a little more insight to your books and the worlds behind them. It's really interesting to see you all in conversation with each other. And Thank you to the entire Harper Stacks team for your previews. Tomorrow, all attendees will receive an email containing links to today's video recording, title list, slide presentation, and a certificate of completion. For more about Booklist webinars, be sure to visit www.booklistonline.com/webinars, where you can view archives of past webinars and register for upcoming ones, like those you see here. Staff training, in-services, local conferences, Booklist can help. You can now request free copies of Booklist and Booklist Reader for upcoming staff training programs, so you can help the next generation of library workers become readers advisory and collection development superstars. Scan the QR code on the screen, visit our website, or email info@booklistonline.com for more details. Mastering the art of reader's advisory involves ongoing study, both of major concepts that form the backbone of a good RA practice and of the skills that make your RA practice effective in the day-to-day. This series of Booklist workshops on Thursday, March 14th, is designed to keep you up to speed on both the ideas and practice that will enhance your reader's advisory game. Visit the Booklist website to register now so you can learn from experts in the field about how genres relate to each other, how to talk to patrons about their leisure reading, and how to write an effective book annotation. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, and one more huge thank you to our special guests, Patty, Naomi, and Maureen, and to our sponsor, HarperCollins Children's Books. This concludes today's webinar, and we'll see you next time.